Uvacha
Uta uvacha
Aupamantrito Ragya
Upamantrito Ragya
Katayamiti Satpate
Katayamiti Satpate
Brahman Rato Vrishamprito
Samarato Brisham Prito
Vishnu Ratena Samsari
Vishnu Ratena Samsadi
Sutta Uvacha
Sauvacha
Saupamantrito Ragya
Upamantrito
Katayamiti Sapatehe
Katayamiti Satpate
Vamarato Vishamprito
Amarato Vrishamprito
Vishnuratena Samsadi
Vishnuratena Samsadi.
Sutta Uvacha
Sutta uvacha
Saupamantrito Ragya
upamantrito ragya
Katayamiti Sapate
katayamiti satpate
Ramarato Brisham Prito
amarato prishamprito
Vishnuratena Samsadi
Vishnuratena Samsadi.
Sutta Uvacha
Sutta Uvacha
Sa Upamantrito Rajna
Sopamantrito Ragya
Katayamiti Sapate
Katayam iti Satpate
Ramarato Prishamprito
Brahmarato Brishamprito
Vishnu Raten Samsadi
Vishnuratena Samsadi.
Sutta uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Srila Sutta Goswami said,
Srila Sutta Goswami said, Sa,
he, Sukadev Goswami,
he, Sukadev Goswami,
upamantrita,
Upamantrita,
thus being inquired,
thus being inquired,
ragya,
Ragya,
by the king,
by the king,
Katayam,
Hatayam,
the topics,
in the topics.
iti,
Iti, thus,
satpate,
Satpate,
of the highest truth,
of the highest truth,
Ramarata,
Brahmarata,
Sukadev Goswami,
Shukadev Goswami,
Risham, very much,
very much,
Prita,
Prita,
pleased,
pleased,
Vishnu Ratena,
Vishnuratena,
by Maharaj Parikshit,
by Maharaj Parikshit,
Samsadi,
Samsadi,
in the meeting.
in the meeting.
Translation. Sutta Goswami said, thus Shukadev Goswami, being invited by Maharaj Parikshit to speak on topics of the Lord Shri Krishna with the devotees, was very much pleased. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam can be legitimately discussed only among the devotees of the Lord. As the Bhagavad Gita was authoritatively discussed between Lord Krishna and Arjuna, the Lord and the devotee respectively, similarly Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the postgraduate study of the Bhagavad Gita, can also be discussed between the scholars and devotees like Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. Otherwise, the real taste of the nectar cannot be relished. Shukadev Goswami was pleased with Maharaj Parikshit because he was not at all tired of hearing the topics of the Lord and was more and more anxious to hear them on and on with interest. Foolish interpreters unnecessarily tackle the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam when they have no access to the subject matter. There is no issue in non-devotees meddling with the two topmost Vedic literatures, and therefore Shankaracharya did not touch Srimad Bhagavatam for commentation. In his commentation on the Bhagavad Gita, Sripad Sankaracharya accepted Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but later on he commented from the impersonalist view. But being conscious of his position, he did not comment on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Shukadev Goswami was protected by Lord Krishna, Vide Brahma Vaivarta Purana, and therefore he is known as Brahma Rat. And Sriman Parikshit Maharaj was protected by Vishnu, and thus he is known as Vishnu Rat. As devotees of the Lord, they are always protected by the Lord. It is clear also in this connection that Vishnu Rat should hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Brahma Rat and no one else, because others misrepresent the transcendental knowledge and thus spoil one's valuable time. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Jakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanjana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishvabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evaja Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prajarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Java Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayatu Dirayet. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So I have a very selfish reason for giving class today and the topic to speak about. I have a tendency to go to depression. I see many things that are reasons to be depressed. And today is Lochanda's disappearance day, and he was like standing for the simple, joyful process. So I intend to speak about the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna and how they are active in my life, and hopefully make an impression on my mind and perhaps yours, that depression doesn't need to take such a big place. So it's the chapter is asking questions. So it's questions by King Parikshit, and actually like this is now there's like the transition from King Parikshit's questions to Shukadev Goswami beginning to respond to these questions. And Sutta Goswami he's speaking here now. He's describing or he's remembering the conversation he heard between Shukadev Goswami and King Parikshit, and he knows, Sutta Goswami, that Shukadev Goswami is extremely happy and joyful to hear these questions, because it's a chance for him. It's a chance for him to speak about Krishna. And it's not just like hearing about Krishna; it's hearing topics of the Lord Shri Krishna with the devotees. And it was about 2 years ago when, dear Govinda, you were in Switzerland, and it was before a series of seminars, and Krishna Chandra came to visit. And I remember like Krishna Chandra and dear Govinda sitting at the table, like speaking about Srimad Bhagavatam in full bliss and joy, and they didn't want to end. And I got like, it was like a turning moment for me to hear this conversation, and in a turning moment in my relationship to Srimad Bhagavatam, because I got, oh, this is real. It's not just a book. When devotees of Krishna and like human beings who caught fire from Srimad Bhagavatam, when they speak about it, it becomes very alive. So I could personally relate to this, like hearing others speak about Krishna, about Srimad Bhagavatam, who with love and devotion, it becomes alive. And so I imagine this is what happened with Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit and everyone there. Srimad Bhagavatam, it wasn't just a dry philosophical conversation. It was filled with life and experience and memories. So questions is something that's we meet questions all over Srimad Bhagavatam and also in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is full of questions by Arjuna, and we get to hear a lot of wisdom because of Arjuna's questions. And also here in Srimad Bhagavatam, the outline, the storyline, or of it's led by questions that King Parikshit asks, and Shukadev Goswami responds by citing other conversations where someone asked the question to someone else who was like more advanced, more knowledgeable, or a lot of conversations where we hear great souls or great personalities approaching Shiva with questions, or approaching Narada Muni with questions, or approaching Brahma with questions. So and then they respond, and we get to hear a lot. So Shukadev Goswami is very pleased by these questions, and I went back to the beginning of the chapter, and I want to read a few verses. And it starts with text 2 when King Parikshit started with his questions, and it says, the king said, I wish to know narrations concerning the Lord who possesses wonderful potencies are certainly auspicious for living beings in all planets. So King Parikshit is aware that his questions, he's not just asking them for himself, he's asking them for everyone in the whole universe. And the responses are going to be enlightening and enriching for everyone who hears those responses. Like he's certain about it. And he continues and says, Oh, greatly fortunate Shukadev Goswami, please continue narrating Srimad Bhagavatam so that I can place my mind upon the Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, and being completely freed from material qualities, thus relinquish this body. So he also has some selfish reasons. He wants to remember Krishna when he leaves his body. It's a glorious selfish reason. Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna manifested in their hearts within a short time. So King Parikshit, he has complete conviction and complete faith that by hearing about Sri Krishna, at the end of those 7 days, at the time of his death of his body, he is going to have Krishna manifest in his heart. A form of clear intention. And then text 5, it's one of my favorite verses. And it says, the sound incarnation of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, for example, Srimad Bhagavatam, enters into the heart of the self-realized devotee, sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship, and thus cleanses the dust of material association, such as lust, anger, and hankering. Thus it acts like autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. So again, like King Parikshit has a very clear idea what is going to happen when he hears Srimad Bhagavatam, and he has full faith and full conviction, full trust in that. And for me, I find it a very beautiful verse how Krishna like enters the heart of the self-realized devotee and then sits on the flower of his loving relationship. And then again, another verse before he starts asking his questions. A pure devotee of the Lord whose heart has once been cleansed by the process of devotional service never relinquishes the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, for they fully satisfy him, as a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. And this really moves my heart, this coming home after a troubled journey. Like all of us were traveling in this universe, or perhaps other universes since thousands and thousands of lifetimes. And here what King Parikshit says is, coming to the place of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, it's coming home. Like this long troubled journey is about to be over in a very short time. I don't know, like the time span of their view, a very short time could mean 100 lifetimes, but it's a promise that the troubled journey is over. So so then after that, King Parikshit starts with a long list of questions, and where we are at now in text 27 is where Shukadev Goswami, after hearing all these questions and feeling a lot of joy and ecstasy and excitement about getting to respond to all these questions, he's going to respond to these questions, and that's the rest of the Srimad Bhagavatam are responses to these questions. And this questions, I was thinking about questions and how important they are, and we often like hear in the Sattvato surrounding about how everyone is asking questions. And I think the last time I heard Parampara, you spoke about it, where you mentioned how every living entity is asking questions, also plants, and where's light, where's water. So and I see the questions more and more. I understand how questions they keep me alive. They keep me alive in my spiritual journey. So when my experience or my reading or my chanting or my endeavors in life become like stale or like not really moving on, often what helps me is to search for my questions, to like open my awareness and find the questions that I have and ask those questions, like consciously ask them and get responses. And a lot of new questions again. Prabhupada then speaks about how important it is to hear from devotees, to hear from, I would say, people who get the essence, to hear from them or not to hear from anyone else, others who don't really get the essence. And he speaks about he speaks about where is it? Shankaracharya, who we also heard is an incarnation of Shiva. Yeah, he's an incarnation of Shiva. So he was like very aware what his role was, or what his role was to come as Shankaracharya. He knew what he was supposed to do. So he knew about Sri Krishna, and he didn't speak about Srimad Bhagavatam. And I get that's also a way of teaching the lesson, not to speak of Srimad Bhagavatam, or not to hear from those who speak of Srimad Bhagavatam who have a view that God is impersonal. God is not really a personality. What struck me and what I would like to speak about is when Prabhupada says Srila Shukadev Goswami was protected by Lord Krishna, and therefore he is known as Brahmarat, and Sriman Parikshit Maharaj was protected by Vishnu, thus he is known as Vishnurat. I thought that was very interesting, like this distinction. So someone can be protected by Krishna, and that's not the same. Well, perhaps it's like one of these the same. It's not the same, and instead it's the same. But someone is protected by Krishna, and someone is protected by Vishnu. And I found that very interesting, and that King Parikshit, he is protected by Vishnu, and therefore he is known as Vishnurat. And Prabhupada says it is clear also in this connection that a Vishnurat should hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a Brahmarat. So Brahmarat is someone who's protected by Krishna and no one else, because others misrepresent the transcendental knowledge and thus spoil one's valuable time. So I don't really understand this distinction. I only just discovered, so there is a distinction. And I didn't do much research other than ask Dear Govinda what's the difference between Vishnurat and Brahmarat, and can I say that we are Vishnurat and Prabhupada is Brahmarat, and what I understood, Dear Govinda, was a short yes. So perhaps at the end, like we will get an idea what it means. What immediately came to my mind is Vishnurat. There's a story of Vishnurat, and Vishnurat, he was born into a family of hunters, and he grew up as a hunter. That was his. That he was told that's his identity. He is a hunter, and he like during his life he met Narada Kripa, and Narada Kripa is like it's very interesting because Narada Kripa also used to be a hunter, and he came across Narada Muni, and Narada Muni actually Narada Kripa, he was then called Mrigari, and he had this habit of half killing animals, and he would leave them like in pain. The idea was to keep the flesh fresh, and it's very, very painful for animals. And Narada Muni, he saw Rigari doing this in this activity, and he didn't stop him and say don't kill animals. He requested him to kill the animals fully and not leave them like half dying and suffering in such pain. And Mrigari was so moved, transformed by this conversation or by meeting Narada Muni, that he became a disciple of Narada Muni, and he stopped killing animals, and he became a devotee of Lord Krishna. So I find it interesting that, like this Mrigari became Narada Kripa, and he lived in the forest with his wife and chanted the Maha Mantra and worshipped Tulsi, and villagers would come and bring them prasadam and hear from him and ask him questions. And so Vishnurat, who was also a hunter, came to Narada Kripa, and the same story. He was a hunter, and Vishnurat enlightened him about the soul and Krishna, and that his identity as a hunter, it's temporary, and he can leave that behind and become a devotee of Krishna. So his name is Vishnurat. So Vishnurat, he was somehow guided by Vishnu to meet Narada Kripa, and Narada Kripa would be Brahmarat because he took shelter of Krishna. And it's described it's actually a book for children. I'm reading it to my children. It's a English lesson in our homeschool. And I lost my thread, what I was going to say.
Talking about Vishnurat, and one who's protected by Vishnu.
Yes, yeah, that he was guided by Super Soul, by Vishnu, to meet Narada Kripa. And it's a beautiful book because actually we have a boy in our homeschool who, since I know him, he wants to stop eating meat, and he's in a family where they eat meat, and just there's it's such a difficult process for them to stop eating meat. And the boy came to a place last summer where he said to me, I decided to stop eating meat. So I want to stop, and one day I will just stop. And at this point, I remembered this book, so I started to tell him this book. And it's very beautiful because it's not at all moralizing. And that's what I get from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not about moralizing. That there's also moral also has a place, and there's conversation about it, but it's not like you should do this and you shouldn't do that. It's like an explanation of this is what happens. Like if you do this, that's the consequence. If you do this, that's the consequence, and we get to choose. I see the chat. One of my favorite questions I ask every day is, how can I help? How can I serve? Thank you, Jim. Nice questions. And Len, I thought Krishna and Vishnu are the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yes, that's what I thought too. And there seems to be a difference. Please excuse me, I need to leave. Okay. The title is Stories of Devotion. Stories of Devotion. Vishnurat Vijay, the story of an ex-hunter. So the book describes the process of this boy, Vishnurat, how he understood that he's not there's another way of living his life and being happy and fulfilled and nourished than being a hunter. And it's not easy for him. It's not like in one go he changed his habits and he's a devotee of Krishna and does nothing else but chant. The first time he leaves Narada Kripa instructed him to chant nothing else, just chant the Maha Mantra. And Vishnurat goes back home and meets his father, and he gets extremely angry with his father, and he destroys all the skins of the animals with his knife. And there's a huge explosion, and a lot of damage is done. And then Vishnurat goes back to Narada Kripa and realizes, oh, he totally forgot the chanting. He was so washed away by his anger and his reproach to his father. Like he said, you made me a hunter. It's all your fault. And then he realizes and he remembers, oh, Narada Kripa didn't instruct me to destroy all the skins. He didn't instruct me to disrespect my father or even be violent to my father. He instructed me just to chant. And then, like, the story goes on, and we hear about the challenge of Vishnurat, what it took him to let go of the identification with the hunter, and to understand that that's temporary, that's going to pass. And I see a lot of like this little boy's process. It's I sense it's very healing for him to hear of other personalities who I mean this boy, he's not a hunter, he eats meat. And to hear, oh, there's a hunter and he was killing animals, and actually Vishnurat, he turns into an animal protector. So he has a special affection for animals and knows their language, and he becomes an animal protector. So this all like for me ties together, this asking questions and hearing from truly realized souls who took shelter of Krishna. And I said I was going to glorify Srimad Bhagavatam and how it works and how it works in my life. And I was looking at questions and Vishnurat, and I remembered the story of Vishnurat, and I see how much it's connected to my life where I am right now. Animal protection, it's like a duty of the householders. So I'm in the householder ashram, that's where I am right now. I have children, I'm married, I take care of a household, and I have kids who love animals, and they want to take care of animals and protect animals, and so this brings up a lot of questions for me. How do I support them in animal protections? My daughters, most of you know them, Anuk and Noah, they decided to build a shelter for animals. Ideally, there would be ponies and horses and cows and chickens and sheep and goats, and everything. And it's not realistic for us to do this right now. So they decided to do like a small protection for rabbits. Out of all animals, rabbits. So I was for a long time, I was hesitant, and I just saw a lot of responsibilities coming my way, and I was also not seeing really the value of protecting rabbits. I mean, I see value to animal protection, and then, but to like have something like, because they really wanted a project with like a bank account to accept donations and creating a flyer and giving the rabbits for adoption. And they were developing this project, and my husband was supporting them, and I was always like on the break. I was skeptical about it. I didn't want them to do it. And then one day I just thought, okay, well, better than sitting in front of the TV, or I don't know, going out and getting into I don't know what. why not support them to give themselves to this animal protection? And so they're doing that, and I got and still get a lot of guidance from reading Srimad Bhagavatam about animal protection, and also knowing about Bhagavad Gita and the different ways that we can go to connect with Krishna. I see that this is an ideal project for them, to learn about the material world, like learning how to write letters, learning how to create nice flyers, learning how to open a bank account, learning how to writing a letter to ask for donations and then saying thank you, and keeping the supporters informed about the project. And so there's a lot of practical learning they're getting from this project, and also a lot of questions that come up about, like, so they want to save rabbits from the slaughterhouse. So what does that mean? We go to the slaughterhouse, and then there are 20 rabbits, and we can choose 4. So, what happens if we just now, like they sent a letter to Malini, dear Govinda, to some of the Bhakti community, and I feel I appreciate so much that they're getting into contact, because they get questions like, so do you feed your rabbits prasadam? And it's something that I have been asking them, and they would go, oh, like one of another of mom's things. And now they get asked by people they really respect and love. And so now they're offering the rabbit food before, or at this point they are trying to find out how to offer rabbit food to Krishna, because Krishna does he really like raw carrots and raw cabbage and all this? So there's so much learning and growth in this project, and what helped them move forward with it was reading Srimad Bhagavatam and understanding the value of animal protection, and that this is part of my duty. And it's actually quite a joyful duty once I accept it and embrace it. There's a lot of fun in it too. Yeah, and this adding, like, so there's this part of the rabbits saving their bodies and setting an example of, or waking up others also to ask themselves, do I really want to eat meat? Do I really agree with the killing of animals? And then there's the part where I see that there's also some, I don't know how to say it, so some engaging others in this service too. And one example is that they went to the bank and they opened a bank account, and they got a donation, and they didn't know who gave this donation, so they called the bank and they asked, like, who gave this? Can you tell us who gave this donation? And the lady said, yes, it's this and this person, and the message is Jai Shri Ram. So the lady at the bank was chanting the names of God, and that was inspiring. So I get from this life lesson that starting where I'm at and supporting others, like my children, to start where they're at, is so important and special and beautiful. And when I ask questions, like when I ask my questions to Srila Prabhupada, I get a response very quickly by reading his books or listening to classes. And then the whole process of creating a place for animal protection becomes complete. And interesting in this connection, in my personal reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, I am in Canto 5, and there's the story of King Bharat. And King Bharat, he also, like he was the ruler of the universe or the world. I'm not sure about that, what I had to call it, but he was a great ruler. He was the greatest ruler. And he, and I mean, I don't understand if it's the whole universe or if it's the whole plane of the planet, Earth planets. So maybe, dear Govinda, you can.
I think it's not the whole universe. I think it might be Bhumandala, the earthly planetary system, like that.
So he was the king, and then there were many other kings underneath him. But so he was a great king, and he was ruling the world and enjoying his life for 1,000 times 1,000 years. And then he gave up everything and he went to the forest and he focused on chanting and meditating on Krishna. And then one day he heard loud roaring, and it was a lion who and there was a deer nearby who was pregnant, and the deer got such a shock that she dropped her baby and left and died. And Bharati was very compassionate and he took care of this baby deer. And while taking care of the baby deer, he forgot, within a few days, he forgot all his spiritual advancement. He stopped chanting, or if he did chant, he was not meditating on Krishna, he was meditating on the deer. And then one day the deer disappeared and he was so concerned he went to look for it, and he died while thinking of his deer. And in his next life he entered the body of a deer. So I thought that's interesting lesson too in this connection. So there's all this all this, like our life at times, our conversations, it's all about these rabbits, rabbit protection. And so I see there's like, it's good to stay grounded and healthy and remember Krishna and always find a way to reconnect all these endeavors with self-realization and with Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's, I feel excited because there's a lot of opportunity to share Srimad Bhagavatam with my children. And perhaps not like, okay, let's sit and read Srimad Bhagavatam. That's not what I want to do. And even if I say, oh, I read the Srimad Bhagavatam, they immediately go like, oh. So I don't even say it's in Srimad Bhagavatam. I will just bring out some statements or some questions that I get from Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, so that's how Srimad Bhagavatam is quite alive for me right now, and speaking to me and responding to my questions and cautioning me also, and showing me where to be careful and where to put my energy. Yeah, because sometimes Srimad Bhagavatam can also seem very far away to me, like different times, different universe, different, so many things different, like flying objects and just like a lot of far out things. And I was thinking about that also preparing for this class, and knowing that it's Lord Chanda's disappearance day today, how when Srimad Bhagavatam becomes too far out for me, I like to go to the six Goswamis or to like recent followers of the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam or Lochandas to sing his bhajans or Srila Prabhupada. It's like a very, very close example where we can even watch movies. We can see Srila Prabhupada, we can see Srimad Bhagavatam walking around in a person, an example of someone who lives Srimad Bhagavatam. And I have a stronger and stronger inspiration and sense of urge to share these wonderful teachings with others. And often I feel like helpless how to do it, or what can I share here in this situation? And I feel inspired that what I can do, if I'm not able to give them something, I can perhaps introduce them to those personalities who can give, or who they are willing to listen to, or they will take it from them. Or if not the way of philosophy, then singing kirtan, and that's Lochanda's request. He requests us to sing kirtan, to engage in bhajan, and to trust that this is enough. So I'm going to stop here for your questions or comments or additions or experiences. Gary Kachendra.
Thank you very much. And I appreciated that you mentioned Murari the hunter. This is, it's a story that I really, really appreciate a lot. It's a really moving story for me. I wanted to read a couple verses related to that story that's sourced from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Narada begins with asking him a question. That one, Narada then inquired, "Why did you not kill the animals completely? Why did you half kill them by piercing their bodies with arrows?" The hunter replied, "My dear saintly person, my name is Magrari, enemy of animals. My father taught me to kill them in that way. When I see half-killed animals suffer, I feel great pleasure." So to me, this is really profound. If, as I understand Magrari, his half-killing animals was not just pragmatic in that he wanted to preserve the meat. You know, he didn't have refrigeration, so if he keeps animals alive, he can take it. But it was really more horrifying that he took pleasure. So there's two interesting points. His material father taught him to kill this way, and he enjoyed it very deeply. And when he met Narada, and this is what I really appreciate about this story, and if you did mention, I'm sorry I didn't hear it mentioned, but yeah, he was deeply, deeply transformed. He not only did not take Narada's advice by, okay, I'm going to kill the animals completely and make that little improvement, but he accepted Narada as his spiritual master. In one sense, then he took on a new father, a spiritual master, and he massively changed his life. He took great instruction from his spiritual master, and he gave up killing animals altogether. And he made his family also Krishna conscious. So they began chanting Hare Krishna and being simple and just depending on the mercy of the Lord, following Narada's instructions. And just the other people were so amazed by this transformation that they would bring them food. So their problems of material existence, like eating, were taken care of. And the ultimate beauty of this story, and I'm thinking you know this story, but if you don't mind me just, resharing it. So I forget the name of the Muni, a different Muni that Narada was traveling with later. Maybe someone knows, maybe it was Agastya, I don't remember.
I think it was Agastya Muni. I think it was Agastya.
Okay. Thank you for confirming that. So they went to visit the now Grihastha ashram of Magrari. And when, of course, Magrari saw Narada, he was so excited. He came running to see his spiritual master and going to dive down to offer full obeisances, dandavats. He saw there were some ants. And he paused and very carefully, allowed and helped the ants get out of the way before offering his obeisances, so he would not injure or crush, kill, or name any of the ants. So to me, this is a really beautiful story. I so much appreciate you causing me to think about it this morning, Anandini. But I did want to make that point. You talked so much about questions at the beginning that Narada kind of opened with a question to the hunter. Mm-hmm. And I wanted it to be clear, at least in my reading from the text, that it was beyond just the pragmatic. This was a really deep thing, the transformation of Narada. I mean, of Magrari by Narada. And thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you for sharing and for highlighting this point of transformation.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Anandini, for your class, for your sharing, philosophical and personal. Thank you, Gajendra, for relating those aspects of the Magrari, the hunter story that are there in the Madhya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya's teachings to Sanatan Goswami. Just in terms of stories, that this Brahmarat, Vishnurat, I saw Lynn's comment. So Vishnu and Krishna, they're one and the same. They're the same. And then there's the distinction. It's an Achintya Beta Beta Tattva. And then the Vishnurat story, Prabhupada's referring, I believe, to, if we go to the first canto of Bhagavatam, how Maharaj Parikshit, he was in the womb of his mother Uttara, and he was being attacked by a very fine nuclear weapon called a Brahmastra. The Brahmastra was trying to kill the embryo, released by Ashvatthama, who wanted to destroy the dynasty by killing the only child there. And then Krishna in the form of Vishnu. So it was particularly Vishnu who kind of revealed himself within the womb to protect Maharaj Parikshit. So it was particularly the Vishnu form. So he's particularly Vishnurat. And then Krishna, particularly protecting Shukadev Goswami, Prabhupada mentions the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. And so that's a story. It's another story about a child in the womb. In this case, Shukadev Goswami, he was in the womb for 16 years. That's a long time. and because he was already a realized soul, at least Brahman realized, and he didn't want to come out. That's true, because he understood what the material world's about. He had realization, and his father, Srila Vyasadeva, like tried to convince him, come on, it's time. Imagine what it's like for your mother, etc., etc. Okay, so no, really, so he didn't want to come out. So Vyasadeva got Krishna himself in the Krishna form. And Krishna himself came, and Krishna convinced Shukadeva Goswami there in the room, you can come out, I'll make sure you're protected, you don't fall into Maya. And so, and then he came out, and then he left pretty quick, and then his father was chasing him. It gets into so many wonderful transcendental stories that all lead to the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Shukadeva Goswami was particularly protected by Krishna himself, and Maharaj Parikshit, also in the womb, was particularly protected by, you might say, Krishna in the form of Vishnu. So I just wanted to share those stories related to that part of the purport.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear Govinda, and thank you, Anandini, for your classes. We are polished here. We are commenting. Wow, it's so cool.
I'm not hearing you well.
We were relishing your class here.
Uh-huh.
Share that, and then commenting on dear Govinda's comment. And I've been thinking a lot about the difference between protection from the material energy and protection from the material illusion, which is not the same. And it seems that the Vishnu rat, it seems that Parikshit Maharaj was protected from the material energy in the form of the Brahmastra, wanted to kill his form as Maharaj Parikshit. And then it seems that Sukadev Goswami, it wasn't about his protection in the sense of his form as Sukadev Goswami, but like with the protection of his spiritual life. And I appreciate the distinction between the two, and I appreciate also the distinction between the different role of Vishnu and Krishna in the form of protection. So that's what was coming to me. Because often I'm thinking like, I want to be protected from going into illusion. That's the biggest fear, coming to illusion. Material energy will slap us this way and slap us this way and slap us this way. I feel like, okay, do we really need protection for that? But the real protection I'm seeking, at least, or I feel really scared of not having, is the protection of forgetting Krishna.
So I want to make sure I understand your thoughts. So like being protected by Vishnu, you relate that to being protected from like karmic reactions?
The onslaught of material energy, I will not say like it was a karmic reaction from Maharaj Parikshit because he's a devotee of his mom, but the onslaught of the material energy in the form of the Brahmastra.
And Krishna protects us from leaving him,
From forgetting him. Yeah.
forgetting him.
Yeah. I'm not saying like Vishnu is for that and Krishna is for that. I'm just looking at the Shiva of Govinda Prabhu, and how I have been, the last few years, I've been thinking of the distinction between like being scared of the material energy or being scared of the material energy, being scared of the material illusion, which is not the same. Like being scared that something will happen to my body or something is going to be crazy or I'm going to hurt or I'm going to be crushed or in some ways. So that's one type of fear. And the other type of fear is that I'm scared of forgetting about Krishna. field of material illusion.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing about this difference, this or distinction.
I appreciate very much that distinction. Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, and you're that of the two types of protection, the protection from the illusory energy, we might say it's more important for those serious about a spiritual path. That is, as far as protection of the physical body, well, material nature will do its thing, and if we approach God, Krishna, for physical protection, good health, I mean that's approaching God, and that's purifying. At the same time, like when Krishna says Kantya Pradijani Name Bhakta Pranashiti, says, my devotee will never perish. I'm getting realization from what you share, Malini, that Krishna is especially referring to that most important type of protection, that like I won't forget who I am as a spirit soul servant of Krishna. And that's a sort of assurance that he gave to Shukadev Goswami there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there time to sing Lochandas Bhajan? And Malini, Narayan, are you up for it? Yes? Okay.
Are you gonna lead it and we'll back you up, or you want
Yes.
to lead it?
Yeah, we can do call response.
Yeah.
Great.
Parama Karuna Paudui Jananitai Gorachandra
Parama Karuna Paudui Jana Nitai Golachandra
Sabavatara Sarashiromani Kevalananda Kanda
Sarashiromani Kevalananda Kanda
Raja Bajabai Chaitanya Nitai Sudrita Vishvasakori
Bajo Bhai Chaitanya Nitai Sudrita Vishvasakori
Vishaya Jadiya Serase Majiya Mukhe Bolu Hari Hari
Vishaya Chariya Serase Madhya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari
Dekore Bai Tribhuvanena Monadayala
Dekore Bhai Tribhuvanena Emona Doyala Data
Pashupaki Jure Pasane Vidare Suniyara Gunagata
Pasupaki Jure Pasana Vidare Suni Jara Gunagata
Samsare Madhya Rohili Poriya Sepadena Hilo Asha
Samsare Madhya Rohili Padiya Sepadena Hilo Asha
Yapana Karama Bunjaya Shamana Kayelo Chanadasa
Apana Karama Bujaya
Chandra
Paramakaruna Bahudui Jana Nitya Gaurachandra
Bhavatara Sarashiromani Kevalananda Kanda
Bhagavatara Sarasiromani Kevalananda Kanda.
And the translation reads, Lord Nitai and Lord Gaurachandra are very merciful. They are the essence of all incarnations. The specific significance of these incarnations is that they introduced a process of chanting and dancing that is simply joyful. My dear brothers, I request that you just worship Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda with firm conviction and faith. If one wants to be Krishna conscious by this process, one has to give up his engagement in sense gratification. Become absorbed in worshipping Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and simply chant Hare Krishna, Hari Hari without any material motive. My dear brothers, just try to examine this. Within the three worlds, there is no one like Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Their merciful qualities are so great that upon hearing them, even birds and beasts cry and stones melt. But I, Lord Chandas, regret that I am entrapped by sense gratification. I have no attraction for the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and therefore Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, is punishing me by not allowing me to be attracted by this movement. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare
I'll read the verse to go complete the circle. Sutta Goswami said, thus Shukadev Goswami, being invited by Maharaj Parikshit to speak on topics of Lord Sri Krishna with the devotees, was very much pleased. Srimad Bhagavatam Gi. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Jai Lord Chandas.
Hare Krishna.
Chaitanya